Good morning, good morning, good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Good morning to Gary Muirhead, who said he just found 10p for the meter, so he's got some Wi-Fi up in Bonnie, Scotland. Morning, Gary. Good of you to join us. Very quickly, I can do this now. There we are. There's a QR code up in the top. Well, top left to me. It may well be top right to you. I'm not entirely sure. I can't see what you're looking at, but you get the idea. So yesterday we were talking about JCB. And the hopefully vague possibility of them upping sticks and leaving the UK. I recorded a video about it. Now, our YouTube shorts, when it's just me chatting about stuff, sometimes we get 1,000 views on them. Sometimes we get 2,000. Sometimes we get 2,500, 3,000. The one about JCB is knocking on the door of 12,000. In fact, it's proved so popular, I thought, well, while I'm sat here doing nothing this evening, last night, I'll write about the subject again. You can see the link to the article in the chat, but it's also a QR code up in the top of your screen as well. Jim Turner has just walked through the door, wiping his feet as he did so. Morning, Jim. Good of you to join us. Thank you very much indeed for being here. So, yes, lots and lots of talk about JCB yesterday. In fact, again, going back to that video that I produced, not that I'm claiming any responsibility for it. I think it says more about the popularity of JCB than it says about the popularity of what I do. But normally we get some comments. We get some comments on the things that we do. Like when I was talking about HS2 a little while ago, we got 47 comments on that, 66 on the JCB story, and still climbing. So yes, lots and lots going on. Jim has just been joined by Mick Norton. Good morning, Mick. I've got a button standing by for you for that very purpose. That's the wrong one. I'll do yours in just a moment. I've just welcomed Mark Whiting, even though I haven't seen him yet. So there we are. That's Mick as well. Dan Cullen has just walked through the door as well. Very good morning, guys, from a more wet and windy Plymouth. So it's okay here today. Hence the reason I'm just wearing a shirt. Yeah, it's not too bad at all. Ken Hatcher has got some weather. He's got some cloud and he's got some rain, which is pretty typical for where he is. And our friend Wolfie, all the way from the United States. Morning, Mark. Better stick around for a moment, then go back to sleep. 5 a.m. here. Then sweet dreams, sir. Sweet dreams. How in Judah Jesus are we? Well, I don't know what that means, but I'm doing okay. I'm feeling pretty good today, actually, have to say. Took delivery. I'm not going to bore you with this, and I'm not going to be one of those guys. Been reading a bit. As you all know, I'm 61 years old. I wouldn't say I'm concerned about my own mortality, although I guess I kind of am, but I'm a little concerned about my level of fitness. And I don't mean I want to run a marathon or anything like that. Found myself stumbling a few times over nothing, not picking my feet up properly, but reading up on it. And apparently when you get older, you start to lose things like fast twitch muscles. So I've invested in a kettlebell. Yeah, I've invested in a kettlebell, basically to sort out my core and my posture and everything else. I've lost a bit of weight anyway. I don't know if you can tell, but I've lost a bit of weight. I'm going to be using the kettlebell. It arrived yesterday. The postman was very, very upset with me because it's a 16 kilo, which is, 35 pound. He had to lug up our drive. He's not pleased at all. Not pleased at all. But yeah, I've got it. It's ready to go. So whereas I normally start 7, I'm going to be starting at 6:30, go out into the garden and do some of that. So if tomorrow I arrive looking red-faced and close to death, you will know precisely why. Gary says, wow, 61 years old. Where was you? Where was your paper round? Chernobyl. Thank you very much indeed for that. Yeah, 61. I know it's 61 and not a day over 30. There are some mornings where I'm 61 and feel not a day over 90. Yeah. Jim Turner says, I'd like to thank you again for your YouTube Shorts tip. I've gotten into making them and they're getting quite popular. I would never have done it without your suggestion. Jim, you're more than welcome, my friend. I'm sure you would. I'm sure you would have stumbled across it. But it is a bit like a magic formula. I mean, that JCB thing, which, again, the one thing that our audience hates hates over on YouTube is just me talking. They like machines, they like diggers and dozers and all that. They hate to see just me talking. But that video, it's 54 seconds long, just me talking about please don't go JCB, picked up 7 new subscribers as a result of that. There you are. And Dan saying, poor Posty. Yeah, poor Posty indeed. As I say, you imagine you've got here in your van. It's there's a package there. Sweet mother of God. And he handed it to me, and I actually went, yeah, sorry, mate. And he just looked at me like, I hate you with every fibre of my being. And off he went. Didn't say a word. Well, listen, a couple of weeks' time, probably less than that. Probably 10 days' time, I shall be sat here, shirt off, ripped, jacked, shredded. I don't know what any of these things mean, but listen, if you see me ever on this show with my shirt off, you'll know I'm quite happy with the results. It's not likely, I've got to be honest. We've got a bunch to get through. I can take away that QR code because you can find it elsewhere anyway. Just go over to our Substack. You can see the link in the chat anyway. So without further ado, let me roll the intro and let's get this show on the road because we've got a double whammy of Caterpillar to kick things off. It is Wednesday, the 15th of April. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition, the Lord High Chancellor of live streaming, and the authentic voice of the global demolition industry. In today's show, I have seen the future of demolition, and it's remote. I'll show you that in a second. We're going into the dirt down under with Kobelco, dedicated to John Deere, and we're doing a double visit to the halls of ConExpo. One vaguely serious, one not serious at all. And today's morning monologue, I've called it When You're the New Kid Every Month. It's aimed at the likes of Jamie Tavui, Nigel Williams, Dan Cullen, those of you that are of the nomadic leanings. That's what it's about. Stick around for that. Well, that'll be the end of the show. Let's have a look. What do we got? Gary says, have you lost your earbuds? No, sir. All in place. Wolfie says, I'll screw it. Might as well stay up and watch. When I set my alarm last night, I said it would go off in 11 hours. It goes off at 6. I'm sure I've gotten enough sleep. Well, we'll be the check of your insomnia. If you find yourself nodding off, it probably isn't that you're tired. It's probably that I'm boring. That's what it is. And Jim Turner says, and the subscribers have jumped from 650 to over 700 in a matter of days, mostly because of the shorts. I'm sure you mean the short videos as opposed to you wearing short shorts. Although I'm sure there is a demographic that would greatly appreciate that. Mick Norton says the government's attitude to JCB's threat to leave the UK looks like the classic Westminster routine: nod gravely, say nothing meaningful, and wait for the donor to calm down. Yeah, absolutely. The article that I've written today, you can see it on Substack, you can see it on LinkedIn. It's basically talking about the other bit of the contribution made by JCB. And we talked about it a bit yesterday, but I decided to put it down in writing. And it talks about things like, I'm just going to throw it up on the screen. In fact, I don't know why I'm going to read it without showing it to you. We can do that. There we are. There we are. The JCB, the unspoken contribution. And it talks about things like the number of people that they employ and the contribution tax-wise that those employees and their local suppliers make as well. The fact that the JCB exports a huge amount of its equipment overseas, and every time they sell a machine overseas, that helps the coffers. The fact that the JCB has helped to pave the country. There's very few houses, roads, and everything else over the last 80 years that haven't had something to do with the JCB, either directly or indirectly. And then over and above all that, obviously it's hard to quantify, but there is their future contribution. Obviously, they've made great strides in the field of electric machines, but they are spearheading the hydrogen drive. Do we really want to lose that hydrogen technology to America? Personally, I don't. Personally, I don't. And there are people saying nice things about Jim's YouTube channel. Good job, Jim. And Gary Muirhead says, well done, Jim. All your hard work finally paying off. Yeah, absolutely. There isn't a magic formula with YouTube, with Instagram, with TikTok. There isn't a magic formula with any of them. All I would say is if you are consistent, it's not a silver bullet, but it is a secret sauce. It really is. And don't forget the A-teams as well. JCB is the go-to machine. Yeah, I was trying to overlook that. Yes, the JCB 3CX, the Ram Raiders vehicle of choice. Well done, Dan. JCB was in Las Vegas with their hydrogen. They were indeed. I say that. I didn't see them. I was elsewhere while that was going on, but yes, they were there. So, again, do we really want to risk leaving that? And again, listen, I realise that corporations and individuals have to pay their tax, and I'm well aware of that. But JCB would leave such a hole. It really would. Anywho, people, it is time to have some films. And we're going to start with the Caterpillar advert, and then we're going to go over to a Caterpillar film, which feels like they've paid me to feature it, but I promise you they haven't. So let's start with this. While all that was going on, I will get to the actual Caterpillar film in just a moment. Mark Whiting has arrived. Mark, I actually said good morning to you about 10 minutes ago, but I've just done it again. Good morning to you. And stand by your beds. Lee Mansfield. Lee Mansfield has just joined us. Good morning, mate. Well, good morning, mate, to you as well. Thank you very much indeed for being here. Jim Turner talking about his YouTube channel. I'm just an enthusiast trying to spread things I find interesting and get monetized if I'm lucky. I hope you are lucky. I'm not. I demonetized a good 3 years ago, which is slightly frustrating, but it is what it is. Dan Cullen says, as much as I like cat machines, they've lost their quality, in my honest opinion, with this outsourcing of parts and engine. Hold that thought, because I'm about to show you some Caterpillar type stuff. When we talk about Cat Command, their remote station system, it's often in relation to all things related to mining. You know, you've got a permanent setup on a mine. You can put the command station either in the mine or somewhere else, and you can operate things remotely. Personally, I've been waiting to see it applied in the demolition industry, because I think it has real advantages right there. And it's happened.
For these pieces of machinery that you can run either from your office in some cases or here on the job site with a remote, it's going to be the next wave of the future. My name is Kevin Rogers. I'm the Demolition Division Manager for ACM Services. We're located in Rockville, Maryland. We do both demolition and environmental abatement. On the demolition side, we do anything from small raises to interior guts to full building knockdowns and structural demolition.
Cat Command remote control essentially allows all technology inside the machine, outside the machine. My name is Adam Gazakis, Site Services Engineering Manager. Here we're with ACM Services today. They're using a 226 with a line of sight remote control belly box. They're using it to load material off of different stories of the building as they're doing demolition. It allows the operator to be outside and out of harm's way.
I think it's amazing. I mean, biggest thing is safety, one. 2, Carter Cat did a great job setting out their trainers to train our guys. The machine arrived on time. The serviceability is great with the sales reps. It's amazing how you can stand away from it, out of the zone of any debris, and it's just the safety standard of that is amazing, because you could use that machine without getting in the way and not causing any damage to yourself or the machine.
This is one of the first in our rental fleet. We're actively expanding to the rental fleet. So if you have a job site or a solution you need, let us know and we'll see what we can do for you.
It's a great piece of machinery. I think the technology is the wave of the future at this point. Just like computers were in the office, these machines are going to be the same way on the outside. It's just been a great tool for us to use on site.
Loving that. Loving that. I think that's absolutely fantastic. Chris Ford has arrived. Morning all, late again. Nothing new there. Listen, better late than never. You may have missed a few things. You know what they are. And Gary says you were doing so well too, Chris. Ken Hatcher says there's a big demolition job across the road from him in Newport. The old steelworks, massive job. Who's got that one? Ken, I'd love to hear from you. And Anne Fraser is saying, good morning, Lee. Good morning, Anne. Good morning, Lee. Yeah, I'm sure I said hello to Lee Mansfield a bit earlier on, and now Anne Fraser has pitched up as well. Listen, all are welcome. We are a broad church here on the Breakfast Show. Good of you to join us, one and all. Where are we headed? Oh yeah, we're going down under in a second with Kobelco. Stick around.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Yeah, as I say, we're heading down under. So good day to everyone that's watching Down Under. Here is Kobelco in your backyard.
I'm Archie. I'm the Managing Director of Haul Wise and Building Wise. Got a civil and earth moving business. We've got a fleet of Kobelco machines. We've got truck and dogs, float, tilt tray, and everything we need to service the civil industry. We predominantly work in Newcastle and the Hunter region. The site that we're working on today is located pretty close to the city, one of the old industrial sites in Newcastle. It's been repurposed to be sold off as industrial lots.
Our Kobelco excavator ranges from a 5-tonner all out to a 30-tonner. The 235 has been a great addition to our fleet. All our operators have loved it. The zero swing part of the 235 there just gives our operators peace of mind when they're working close to boundaries or structures there. For example, we'll dig a big basin drain pretty close to the boundary fence there, and our operators didn't have to worry about a counterweight swinging around and brushing up against the fence whilst they were doing the precision work. The cab, all the operators love it. Everything in there is practical. The ergonomic side of it is great. It's fitted with Trimble Earthworks GPS, and it's easy to find work for it because it's so versatile. It can do a range of different jobs on site there. It's conditioning some soil behind us here, and it can also do your precision final trim stuff.
Fuel efficiency is great from a business perspective, the running costs, the servicing, and our local dealers, Gatto, they're a family-run business. Their after-sales support's incredible. We'd say they've got the best after-sales service for machines in the area, which gives us a peace of mind to know that if something does happen on site or we need something, they mobilise pretty quickly and always keep our machines working. We haven't had any machines break down. We've got machines with nearly 10,000 hours on them. We've always made sure we've met our service intervals. We've had our maintenance and upkeep like you should, and we've had no major breakdowns on site.
Our opinion of Kobelco and Gatto is very high, which is why we keep going back to them and buying more of their excavators. The product itself, our operators love it. From a business perspective, for downtime, reliability, it's second to none, and our after-sales service with Gatto and the boys up here in Newcastle is also second to none.
What a fine fellow Lee Mansfield is. He said, I've shared this on the Digger group and my Facebook profile for you too, mate. Well, thank you very much indeed. Most kind. Dan Cullen. I saw this as well. I see Rolls-Royce got the contract to build the new mini nuclear energy plant in Wales. Yeah. I mean, obviously we were speaking about JCB earlier, a somewhat traditional company, started out in a blacksmith shed and they're now into hydrogen. Rolls-Royce, who most people know for their splendid cars, I realised they diversified over into aerospace and the engines to keep our planes in the air. But yeah, nuclear power as well. And Ken Hatcher on the power plant that's being taken down over in Newport. Thought you would know. I don't, but I will check it out. It's mad. 0 machines in a massive area, and you see the big counterweight in the tight site. Dan Cullen says it's £9 billion for the MOD. Wow. Big money. Nice work if you can get it. We're going to John Deere in just a second.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
I agree, Dan. Nice to see Kobelco in action. I agree 100%. I have to say, Kobelco Australia do some really, really good stuff. I think they've got kind of a partnership with a local, an Australian magazine, and they seem to do lots and lots of videos together, which I think is absolutely fantastic. Wish Kobelco over here would do the same. Kobelco Europe do okay, not as well as Australia, but Kobelco here in the UK, which obviously doesn't exist, it's through the likes of Blue Machinery, don't do quite so well. Do UK Demolition endorse the use of remote control skid steers to work above ground level in multi-story works as per the CAT video? It's an interesting use of the word. I've seen it a couple of times. I know H Demolition in London were using that very system, although theirs was a Bobcat. It was a Bobcat, a remote control system, and it was a Bobcat machine that they were using it on. So endorse, I think, is the wrong word. Are they embracing it? To a degree they are. It's early doors. Endorse it, I'm not sure we're at that point. I mean, I'd like to see us moving towards that point where, you're above ground level. Why take the risk? Turn it into a remote control rather than having somebody sat in it working up to the edge of a building like that. But yes, that's where we are. Apparently, is it Brown and Mason on that job? Given that it's a power plant, you'd kind of think it would be likely, but I don't actually know. Rolls-Royce cars aren't made by Rolls-Royce anymore, although once they were made in Derby. Yeah, aren't they? I'm trying to remember. Aren't they part of BMW or something like that now? Is that the way it went? I can never remember. It's a long while since I've watched Top Gear, so I can't really remember. Anyway, I promised you some John Deere, and some John Deere you should jolly well have. After this, we've got not one but 2 visits to the North Hall of the ConExpo exhibition. The first is actually a look around the stands, but we've also got a bit of a look around the food that was on offer, just for shits and giggles, basically. So let's have a bit of John Deere, and I'll come back to you with ConExpo after this.
Sullivan, and I'm a John Deere test pilot.
My name's Steve Gallant, and I'm a John Deere test pilot.
My name's Lester Bailey, and I'm a John Deere test pilot.
I'm Curtis Rosignol, and I'm a John Deere test pilot. We like to do anything that involves excavators and dirt, basically. A heavy civil construction company based out of Fredericton.
I love the fact that our company has a great reputation in the local market and community at large.
We're known as the ones that get it done on time, and get it done right the first time. The test pilot experience has been great.
We were approached by John Deere to participate in the test pilot program. They're developing a machine and they want to involve us with it. We consider John Deere a great product and a great partner. Every month we had to report back to John Deere with various metrics from the machine, any issues we had with it.
Dan, I think you're right. That started to look familiar. I may have pressed the wrong button, actually. I'm fairly sure I've got 2 John Deere videos on my system. But he says, you showed this video last week. It did feel familiar. I may have played the wrong one. For that, I apologise. But there's been lots of chat about Rolls-Royce. which I didn't see coming today. Chris Ford says Rolls-Royce cars aren't made by Rolls-Royce anymore. We got that one. Ken Hatcher then explains Rolls-Royce has nothing to do with cars now. They sold it. Plane engines now in the UK that they're using nuclear engines that they use on submarines. Mick Norton says Rolls-Royce cars are made by Rolls-Royce Motor Cars Limited, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of BMW AG. Thank you very much indeed for that. Ken Hatcher also says Rolls do make diesel engines, though. I've never had to worry. Always quite fancied owning a Rolls-Royce. I do remember an article, one of my favourite newspaper writers, a guy called A.A. Gill, was basically big mates with Jeremy Clarkson, and the pair of them got together and they bought an old Rolls-Royce, a very old Rolls-Royce, for about 10,000 quid just for a jolly. Always quite fancied doing that. I mean, if I had a spare 10,000 quid, I could probably find something way more interesting to do with it than that. But yeah, I quite fancy that. Anyway, we're going to play you one more very quick advert, and then we're going to go over to the North Hall of ConExpo. So back after this. I have to agree with you, Dan. He says, look what I started by mentioning Rolls-Royce. I'm every bit as guilty, so I'm not blaming you, but I'm every bit as guilty. But we are... Sometimes I take my dog for a walk, and she's old. She's 14 years old, and she's quite slow, and she's quite focused. She walks along. I basically have her lead on one finger. She's not going anywhere. She's not running off. She's not bothered by people. She's not bothered by cars. She picks up the occasional scent, and but by and large, she will walk in a straight line. And then she'll spot a squirrel. We're like that on this show. Here's the regular broadcasting, and we're going to talk about this, and we're going to talk about that, and they're all Rolls-Royce. That's the way we work over here. Lee says, dear, good machines, because I haven't been on one. Yes, they are, but they're not here. That's the problem. They're not here. A Rolls-Royce isn't a car. It's a polite way of saying, I don't queue. Was there any truth? And I've never worked out whether this was a true thing or whether this was one of those urban myths. I'm sure I was told that back in the day of Rolls-Royce, I'm probably talking about the 1970s, maybe early 80s here, that you could take a 50p piece, one with the flat edges, and put it on the engine block of a Rolls-Royce with the engine running, and the 50p wouldn't fall over. The engine ran that smoothly. I'm sure I heard that. I don't know whether that's true or whether that was just an apocryphal tale. Jim Turner says, this show is a living organism, which is weird because I use that term in the morning monologue today. It's not regimented. That's the appeal to me. Well, it's just as well, isn't it? You imagine you have to be here at 10:10 because that's when we're going to do that segment. We'd never, ever hit that. Not once. Not once would we hit that. Right. Back to ConExpo. We're rapidly running out of ConExpo content, but we're going to do a couple. We're going to do a couple back to back, basically because they're the same area. We're going to the North Hall, which I'll show you in a second, and then after we've done the North Hall, I'll come back and very quickly tell you why I'm doing the other one. It's only for what is it? It's a minute and a half. The other one, so this is 5 minutes walk around the North Hall at ConExpo. Okay, it's Thursday, still Thursday. If you saw the Central Hall video, you know exactly where we are. A bit chilly outside today, a bit windy, so come indoors for this part of the show. We're heading now for the North Hall, one of the bigger halls actually. So let me spin the camera around and I'll take you on a quick guided tour of the North Hall. I did take a very quick shortcut through here yesterday. I can't say that I've actually got my bearings, so bear with me for just a second. We'll go past JLG, obviously the access equipment. One of the companies we've featured on the Breakfast show in the past is a company called Bull out of India. And they are here, out in force actually, fair to say. There is their backhoe loader, looking oddly reminiscent of a JCB. Then over into their skid steers. And a more compact backhoe loader as well. Joystick drive, apparently. It's called the Smart Kid, okay, fair enough. Go out of our bull. Just very quickly, if anybody's watching this and you are looking for a bit of diversification, they're on the lookout for deals. There's a stand in front of me called New Pig. I've no idea what New Pig do. Maybe I'll find out when I get there. We were here yesterday actually filming with CM Labs. We're just going to go around past their stand now. As I say, it's early doors, still only 7:52 in the morning, so nobody here yet, but here is their simulator setup. If I take you past that and through here, one of the other companies that we met with yesterday is a company called Spanner. If you look very closely at this video, I'm actually wearing a Spanner hat, although the word Spanner is written in Korean, so you probably wouldn't know that. But that there is the Spanner stand. As you can see, it's spelled X-P-A-N-N-E-R, X-Spanner, but it's pronounced Spanner. Very techy in this part of the show, I have to say. Lots of software and systems and solutions of that kind. It's been one of the themes of the show, really. Lots of hardware, obviously, but also lots of software as well. Quite funny doing these things. I'm discovering this hall at the same time as you are. You're literally walking through and voyage of discovery. I don't know what's going to be around the next turn, to be perfectly honest with you. It's all a bit peripheral, this kind of stuff. I'm sure all of the tools here are absolutely vital for somebody. Not quite like the hardware, although I have to say, if anyone would like to get me one of these drones, I'd be more than happy to take it. Yep, the North Hall, not the most exciting, I have to say, although we do have an unexpected visitor strolling around. Must have an exhibitor's pass. There's a pigeon in the hall. To complete this tour of the not overly exciting North Hall with a quick spin past tyres in the background there. An absolutely massive drone as well. There we are. I am, as the joke says, tired of the North Hall. Right, so there's the North Hall. Not the most exciting, I grant you, but it did have its upsides. You know, when you go to, well, I'll say some of this anyway, but you go to the NEC, for example, which is an indoor exhibition centre, and you basically have to sell a kidney in order to afford a dog-eared cheese and pickle sandwich. They do it a bit differently in America. Okay, this is a slightly odd one. We've all been to exhibitions in the UK, Plantworks, Hillhead, where you're basically eating off of burger vans and that kind of thing. If you go to the NEC, you're paying £87 for a sandwich. Here in Las Vegas, they do things slightly different. I'm going to give you a very quick look through the food that's available here in the North Hall. I'm going to spin the camera around. So starting at this end, you can have Chinese. Not open yet because it is breakfast time. You can come over here to the Southwest Grill. You can have a sausage breakfast burrito or a country-style breakfast bowl, all freshly cooked. You can see the guy burning stuff over in the background there. There's a Starbucks in the background there. Here's an array of goodies as well. Over to here, to Brand Burgers and Chicken. Again, not open yet because it is 8 o'clock in the morning. Atomic Pizza, because who wouldn't want an Atomic Pizza? And then if you want something to drink, well, you're kind of spoilt for choice. You've got all of that. Spin around here. And you've got some healthy options, you've got some salads, you've got some sandwiches, you've got croissants as well. You can also pick up a beer while you're here as well, should you be that way inclined. Through the fruit juices, through the very expensive bottles of water, and back out here.
The runner of the people.
To the most important stand of all. That's where you get your coffee. There you are. Yeah, $7 I was paying for bottles of water. Are they expensive in comparison to the UK? Funnily enough, the food wasn't. The water was, as I say, $7. So it's about $5.50 or thereabouts for a bottle of water, which, you know, phenomenally expensive. But the food, no, not so much. You pick up a burger for about $4 or something like that, so maybe £3. Let's have a look. Let's go back. Dan says, that looks great. You could do your weekly shop. You damn near could. Let's go back because we're still bizarrely talking about our Rolls Royce. Dan says, I once worked for a guy who had a Rolls Royce. He used it to take diesel, tools and oils in it to site. All he said was, it's a car with an engine. Yeah. Sure, I'd treat it with a little more respect than that. Chris, further explaining, MWM engines own the diesel engine part of Rolls-Royce. Does that mean the JCB loading shovel is really a Rolls-Royce? I'm sure they would tell you it probably is. Nice-looking ball on four wheels. It is. Lee Mansfield. That's why I haven't been on one day, not in the UK. At least I know now. Thanks for letting me know. Yeah, hey, listen, this show is nothing if it's not an education. Jim Turner, talk about the smoothness of engines. There's a massive steam beam engine near me. The beams, two of, weigh 13 tons each. A pound coin can be stood up on the beam whilst it's running. It's that smooth. The whole engine is a work of art. Dan, I think as I talked about Bull, first time seeing them in person. I believe the engine mounts on the old Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow were designed to absorb almost all vibration. I'm sure that was the case. As I say, I'm sure I heard that somewhere, but I don't know where I heard that. If I can get time, I'd love to go. I'm trying to get to Hillhead this year. All going well. Yeah, I'll be there for at least one day. That's where I'm standing on it at the moment. At least one day. Lots of signs saying dealers wanted. Yeah, particularly in that hall. I mean, there were others in the outdoor area, but because of the tech nature of the North Hall, you know, lots of software and systems and solutions, a lot of the companies that were in there were kind of startups, maybe not brand spanking new, you know, they obviously have a product to sell or they wouldn't have been there, but they are quite young companies, so they are still looking for their international networks. Exhibitions, bit hit and miss. I mean, I've never actually been to a Bauma or an Intermat, a Samota or a ConExpo and thought, oh, I could invest in that. But there was a lot there that was companies just making their way. I've always quite fancied, I said this to Fred the other day, I've always quite fancied getting in on the ground floor with a company like that. You know, offering my marketing and PR services basically for nothing in return for a stake in the company. So in other words, if I can make them hugely successful, I get the benefit as well as they do. Always quite fancy that. If there's any companies out there like that that fancy taking a bit of a punt on that, I'd be very interested to speak to you. Anyway, people, that pretty much wraps up the main part of this morning's show. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping, you know, gazelle-like over into my morning monologue. If you can't stick around for that, please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends and your colleagues. I hope to see you again very soon. Tomorrow would be good, but if you do have the time and the inclination, the monologue I'm about to share with you will apply to quite a few of the people that I've seen in the chat today. So stick around. Do you remember that cold, hollow sensation in the pit of your stomach? You're standing at a pair of oversized iron gates, clutching a bag that feels too heavy, wearing a blazer that's at least 2 sizes too big. It's your first day at high school. You don't know anyone. You don't know where the toilets are. You don't know who the bullies are. And you're terrified of breaking a rule you haven't even been told yet. Most people leave that feeling behind them at 16. They find a career, settle into a rhythm, and walk into their workplace on a Monday morning with the confidence of familiarity. But for a growing number of men and women in the UK demolition and construction sectors, that first day trauma isn't a distant memory. It's a recurring nightmare. Because of the industry's obsession with self-employment, we've created a workforce of perpetual strangers, men and women who are the new kids every few weeks. Every time a project ends or a contractor decides to trim the fat, that worker is back at the gate, back to being the newbie. The toll that takes on a person's mental health isn't just about money or job security. It's about the sheer grinding exhaustion of a never-ending learning curve. It starts in the van or in the lay-by outside the site. You're sat there wondering, does this site prefer orange or yellow? I realise it sounds like a small thing, but if you turn up in yellow high-vis and the contractor has a total orange policy, you failed the litmus test before you've even signed in. You're the odd one out. You're the unprofessional one. You could be sent home unpaid. Then comes the induction. We've all been there. You sit in a freezing ported cabin, staring at a PowerPoint presentation that you've seen 50 times before. But you have to pay attention because every site manager has their own particular and peculiar brand of my way or the highway. And then there's the piss test. For a transient worker, the drug and alcohol test isn't just a safety check. It's an interrogation. You're not worried because you're a user. You're worried because you had a chesty cough and took a spoonful of night nurse on Sunday evening. You're worried that a false positive will blackball you before you even had a chance to prove you can operate the machine. The real danger, however, isn't in the paperwork. It's in the choreography. When a demolition or construction crew works together for years, they become a single organism. They don't need to shout. They don't even really need to talk. The excavator operator knows exactly how his ground worker moves. The ground worker, in turn, trusts the operator's hand. He knows the rhythm of the machine, the swing of the counterweight, and the sound of the engine under load. It's a dance. It's beautiful, efficient, and most importantly, it's safe. But when you throw someone into that mix who doesn't know the steps, you break the dance. You end up with a team of strangers. You have a driver who doesn't trust his banksman and a burner who doesn't know if the lad holding the fire extinguisher is looking at the sparks or looking at his phone. Every move becomes cautious and jumpy. Every task takes 10% longer because you're constantly checking over your shoulder, second-guessing the bloke next to you. That jumpiness is a heavy burden to carry for 10 hours a day. It's a mental tax that the bosses never see, but the workers feel in their bones by Friday night. The industry calls this flexibility. They say it's good for the worker. Be your own boss, manage your own tax. But let's be honest, it's a transfer of risk. The employer gets to fire and forget. They don't have to worry about your long-term health, your holiday pay, or your mental state. They just want a unit of labour to show up, do your bit, and disappear. But humans aren't units of labour. We're social animals. We need to belong to a pack to feel secure. By forcing the demolition and construction industry into a gig economy model, we're stripping away the one thing that keeps men safe on high-risk sites: the bond of brotherhood. Is this good for the employers? In the short term, the spreadsheet would say yes. Lower national insurance, no sick pay, no dead wood on the books. But look closer. Look at the productivity loss of a team that doesn't know each other. Look at the cost of the accidents that happen because a stranger doesn't know the site's specific quirks. Look at the performance tax paid every time a seasoned pro has to spend his first 3 days just figuring out who does what. We're treating the most skilled, most dangerous jobs in the country like we're flipping burgers. But you can't standardize a demolition or construction site. Every building is a puzzle, and every tool and every team is a tool. If you keep changing the parts of that tool, eventually it's going to break. Standing at those iron gates on a Monday morning shouldn't feel like the first day of school when you're 45 years old. It's surely time we stop pretending that temporary is the same thing as efficient. The learning curve in this industry is already steep enough. Nobody should be expected to climb it every few weeks. Here we are. Partly inspired by our friend Mr. Cullen, partly inspired by our friend Jamie Tavui, and partly inspired by everybody else that is the new kid on the block every couple of weeks when they're moving from site to site to site. That's what we're saying. What do we got here? Let's have a look. Dan saying, talking about Rolls-Royce and the steam beams and stuff. They need to do this on machines, more shock absorption and cab suspension. I thought machines these days were much better than they were. Yes, I'd like that with my designs too. A flat wage, then a tiny percentage of each machine that gets sold. Hope JCB are listening. Please give me a job, he says with prayer hands. This is unbelievable. Been on sites where I had to wear orange and green. Orange and green. Allegedly. I was slightly nervous about any sentence that begins with allegedly, because it usually means I'm walking a legal tightrope. But here we go. Mick says, allegedly, the JCB JS 300, 330 and 370 excavators have MTU engines, which is part of Rolls-Royce power systems. What a tangled web we weave. Oh, what a monologue. Thank you, Mark. Amazing. Thank you, Dan. I hope you realise how much of a two-way street this whole nonsense of a show is. You know, I'd like to think I'm casting wisdom into the ether, and you're picking up on it. But trust me, there's an awful lot of wisdom going back the other way, and I do like to seize upon it. I'm going to say somebody called GEWC over on Instagram just said, "Hi, sir." Well, hi back to you. I don't know where you are in the world, but good morning to you. If it is morning, if it isn't morning, good afternoon or good evening. One of those. Dan says, yes, what I see is you get to bond with the team, flip of a coin, you're back looking for work, and you're continuously changing teams and trying to fit in. Extreme example with this. And one of the best examples, I think. And I was talking about it being like a ballet or a choreographed dance. When I've been along to see Armac demolishing a bridge, there's a huge amount of pre-planning goes into it of who's going to do what, how, sequence of the demolition and stuff. But everybody on that project knows their role. You've got the big excavator in the middle taking out the central core, some smaller excavators out on the wings taking out. And as I say, everyone knows their role. You've got engineers and fitters and stuff like that standing by should anything go wrong. Armac, I don't know if they still do, but they used to take the van from Pertec Birmingham, regardless of where they were taking down a bridge, the van from Pertec Birmingham would be accompanying them, because they wanted to make sure that whoever was mending hoses knew their machines intimately and intricately. They rather than just having, if the job needed 6 machines, they'd have 12, because they didn't want to risk anything going wrong. Everything was choreographed, and there was a really clearly defined sequence and a sweeping and you do this and then I'll do that, and everybody knows their role and everybody performs their role. If during any of those they'd have thrown me the keys to one of the excavators and says, right, join in, can you imagine the chaos? I mean, the chaos from my point of view would be, what the fuck am I doing here? Because I'm a terrible operator and I don't know anything about it. But think about those guys. They all know. Bob will be over there and Bill will be over there and Stan will be over here, and we all know what's going on with that. The moment you throw a stranger into that, the stranger is going to struggle, but more importantly, the choreography will fall down. We are. I'm just going to say this. Lee says engines do not like dirty diesel. No, they do not. when you, I mean, even in a construction site, if you've got, let's say Dan, he's on a heap, he's on an excavator, you've got dump trucks going around him, and he's set the site, he's tied it up around him, he's sat up on a platform, and the trucks will come in, they'll park there, and they'll go out that way and everything, and then you have somebody who's just arrived, hasn't been shown the ropes, they're just thrown in at the deep end, and he decides to come in the other way. He might only do it once, he might only do it twice, and then somebody will take him to one side, but that's lost productivity, it's lost safety, it's a breakdown of the dance of demolition and construction. And I wonder, I don't even know if things like time and motion studies even exist anymore. But I wonder, just very quick, one more very quick example of the importance of teamwork. Erith Demolition, based down in the Kent Surrey, or the Kent Essex border rather. Fantastic company, really top-notch demolition company. When they started doing work on nuclear power stations, they actually formed what they referred to, I think, internally as the A-team. So anything nuclear, it was the same guys. It was the same site supervisor, the same project manager, the same excavator operators. It was the same team. We'd do that one, and then we'll move over to this site, and we'll do that one, because they all knew their place, their role, the sequence, the schedule, and everything else. That allows them to hit the ground running. Here's a new project in a new site, a new location, but you're on the same machine with the same people. You're basically doing the same thing that you did 6 months ago, 12 months ago, or 3 weeks ago. You're just doing it in a new place, so they can hit the ground running. If you are constantly changing that team, even if it's a 12-man team and you're changing 2 or 3 of them, 9 people have to learn those 2 or 3, and those 2 or 3 have to learn the other 9, plus the job, plus the idiosyncrasies of inductions and drug and alcohol tests and check-in processes and sign-out processes and health and safety checks and what PPE to wear, what PPE not to wear, whether they can use a mobile phone or not, when the break times come around, do they work weekends, where do they stay, where do they eat? All of those things has to be learned. And I realize in the grand scheme of things, taking people off your books from an employer standpoint is probably highly advantageous in terms of cost. You don't have national insurance to worry about, don't have sick pay, don't have holiday pay. You can dispense with all of that and crack on. But how much of that is then eradicated by lost productivity, lost efficiency, and potentially lost safety? Because every once in a while, every week, 2 weeks, 6 weeks, 6 months, everybody on that site has to learn the whole thing again. Jamie Talvui just said, "Oh my God, this morning monologue explains my last 6 years." You were a key part of the inspiration behind it. Yeah, I mean, we were talking about that. I think Nigel Williams' experience is slightly different because he's kind of a troubleshooter. So he tends to arrive to, his job is to be, that flexible part of a team. But if you've got, a long-term construction project, a long-term demolition project, and you're humming along, and I mean, you must even feel this. If you're working on a site for a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, maybe, and you're a pretty close-knit team, you all have a bit of a coffee together in the morning, you all have a bit of a chin wag, there's a bit of banter going on, and then one of them goes on holiday or goes off sick, and a replacement comes in. You immediately feel that change, that shift. And the person that comes in might actually be a really good, could even be a better operator. But because they do things slightly differently, the whole thing gets thrown out of kilter. We were talking earlier about Rolls-Royce and Rolls-Royce engines. And, they are very well respected. Cars, planes, we've just learned possibly diggers as well, nuclear power stations, which is absolutely fine. But if you took, I'm going to show you how little I know about engines now. If you took the spark plug off a Rolls-Royce engine and you stuck on it one out of a Skoda, spark plug would probably still do the same job, but it wouldn't be quite right. That's what we're talking about. Dan says, like I'm here in Plymouth 6 weeks, get on well with the guys and all the quarry employees. Canteen's been a laugh daily, but I finish the week on next week due to the weather. Yeah. And then you're back to having to learn a new bunch of people, a new site, a new set of operating systems. I do remember that very distinctly. My first day at school, I got lucky. I left my primary school, 11 years old, and I was going to the local comprehensive. And I turned up on the first day, and it was that was written from experience. I did have a blazer that was too big for me. I did have a bag. It was empty, but it was way too big, weighed a ton. Didn't know where I was going. Didn't know what I was doing. But there was a sign on the front door of the school. New children this way, and we were filed into a school hall, big school hall. And I walked through the door, and somebody shouted my name, and it was a guy that I knew from primary school. And it was literally like somebody saying, all that you was worried about. Yeah, never mind. You're among friends now. And after that, it was fine. But imagine doing that every week, every 2 weeks, every 3 months, having to go in. I mean, personally, I find that daunting. I've not had to. I said this to Jamie when I was speaking to him. I changed jobs 3 or 4 times when I was working for a publishing company, but 2 of those changes were changes within the same department. So I wasn't having to learn new people. I was just moving from that desk to that one over there. Not a problem. I wasn't learning new people or new systems. It was just a different part of the same thing. But imagine having to go and be the new kid, the new boy, the newbie every few weeks and having to maybe it's just me. I find people quite daunting. I'm kind of ill at ease when I first meet people. Once I know them, once we've had a bit of a chat and everything else, I'm fairly chilled. But imagine how daunting that is. Having to turn up, regardless of how confident you are in your skills and your capabilities, regardless of the fact that you are clean for alcohol and drugs, regardless of the fact that you've got a competence card that proves categorically that you can do the very thing you're about to do, but you've still got to go and do it on a new site with a new machine, surrounded by new people with new systems and new operating principles. I think that's really, really daunting. Dan says, in my opinion, this is part of the reason jobs overrun because of rates, constant moving of men around, new guys coming in with no clue. I'd go even further than that. Even if the guys that come in have got a clue, even if they come in, they're a 30-year veteran, they can make that machine stand on its nose, stand on its tiptoes. They are elite. They are the prima donna of the digger world. In their digger world. Not necessarily in yours, not necessarily in the site, not necessarily in that application. If you took somebody, a really skilled operator off a civil engineering project and stuck them on a demolition site, yeah, they could drive the machine, but it's unfamiliar. And vice versa, it's unfamiliar. You get a true measure of successful teamwork and support mechanisms when working with piling rigs, says Mick Norton. Again, I do think the piling business do have this probably better sorted than we do. I don't know if that's still the case, but certainly my experience back in the day was a team effort. You tended to have the same teams going from place to place to place as a collective, as it were. Jim says, it doesn't bother me. I'm there to work, not socialise or fit in. I think it's deeper than just fitting in. I think it's I'm thinking about this in my head. Imagine a drone looking down at a road construction project, and maybe you've got a couple of scrapers going up and down, and you've got a dozer giving them a push, but also maintaining the whole road. Maybe there's a grader there as well, and then over in the distance there's an excavator and an ADT, and everything is like I said, it's a dance. Everybody flows and they come together. The scraper comes around just as the dozer comes behind it to give it a bit of a shove, and then as it goes, the dozer carries on behind it and levels out where it's spilled material, and then the whole road is clear for an ADT to go past, and then another scraper comes in, by which time the dozer is back. Everything is flowing and all sequenced. And then somebody turns left or instead of turning right. That's the bit I'm talking about. Treat you like a number even though you're helping with their profits. I've got that out of sequence. This is a problem. CIS, self-employed status, fire and hire regularly. Think this is why no company cares about their employees, because they're not employees. They're not employees. They're just, I mean, I referred to them as units of labor. What is the industry term for it? Seat warmers. Yeah, we need somebody in a 20-tonner. I don't care whether it's male or female, black, white, yellow, green. I don't really care what colour competence card he's got either or she's got. Really don't give a monkeys. But I want somebody in that machine for Monday morning. That's the thought process. Which, from a 50,000 feet point of view, I've got 5 machines on the site, and all 5 have operators. But if 4 of those operators are going left, that's left, while 1 operator is going right because he's the newbie, is that still cooking? Is that still efficient? Jim says, I like working with piling crews. They're usually more organised than other trades. That was always my experience. Always got the impression they thought they owned the site, though. That was my concern with mainly because I think I've spent most of my time on site on a demolition side of things. And it always feels like the demolition, as far as piling contractors are concerned, demolition contractors are just those blokes that get in the way. You know, you kind of get the understanding that they've arrived, it's time for you to piss off because they've got things to do. Never mind the fact that you've got things to do, they've got things to do. That's my experience. I don't know whether that's universal. Fitting in as a newbie isn't about pretending to be someone else. It's about reading the room fast, understanding the team's unwritten rules. And there's another thing. Well said, Mr. Norton. When you go for your site induction, you will be given the written rules of the site. We start at this time, we finish at that time. There are noise restrictions, so we can't do this. You can work there, you can't work there. No drugs or alcohol, we will be tested. No mobile phones beyond this point. All of that is laid down. The colour of PPE you're going to wear, the type of boots you're going to wear in extreme circumstances, the laces that are allowed in those boots that you're wearing, all of those things are laid down. What they don't tell you is the unwritten rules, as Mick has rightly said there. The unwritten rules, which are kind of made up between everyone. It's not necessarily a mandate from on high. It's we do this. When you come on this site, we do this thing. And it might be something as simple. I know Ken Hatter is a bit of a fan of this. You know, Fridays, we all go for breakfast together. I realise that's not a rule, but that's what you do. There are thousands of those little things that people do on each and every site. And if you're constantly changing people, those rules, foibles, idiosyncrasies, quirks fall between the cracks. And between the cracks is where problems lie. Dan says, well, piling rigs have the rights of site as they want to get the job done. Yeah, but so does everyone else. You could say the same about the steel workers. Come on, you piling bastards, get out of the way. We've got things to erect over here. Again, I'm not blaming piling contractors. I'm not blaming steel workers. I'm not blaming demolition contractors. I'm blaming the management of sites. You know, we've been talking here about, you know, the need for a sequence. I often wonder how aware of that sequence project planners really are. You know, we've got a demolition contractor here saying they can do this job in 3 weeks. We'll give them 2 and we'll tell the piling contractor to turn up on the Friday of the second week. It'll be fine. What's the worst that could happen? We know exactly what the worst could happen. In actual fact, the demolition contractor had told you 3 weeks. He really needs 3.5, but he was trying to get through the door. And now you've got a piling contractor chomping at the bit. He's dedicated men and machines to a job that he can't actually start because the hairy-ass demolition man is still in his way. They've done exactly the same thing with the piling and then leading on to the steel erectors. Steel erectors are sat there. We were told to start on the 1st of June. It's now the 10th of June, and there are still buggers in the way. Yeah. Anyway, people, that will probably do us for today, I would think. I'm going to be back tomorrow for yet more of all of this stuff and nonsense. Don't forget, over on Substack, you can read about JCB's unspoken contribution to the British economy, if you so desire. You can also read the morning monologue, which I will be sharing over there forthwith. I'm back tomorrow, 10 a.m. Until then, everybody, stay safe. And if you do happen to have a newbie in your midst, rather than shouting at them and telling them what a stupid bugger they are, maybe take them through the unspoken rules for 5 minutes. Very quickly, Mick Norton says, when I worked for Bullivants, a house builder questioned why the rig crew earn so much money. Roger replied, I don't care if my men carry their wages home in a wheelbarrow. Just get the piles in. Yeah. I think there's a lot of that about. That will do us. People, go and have a fantastic day. Back tomorrow. See you then.